Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 22 of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I speak to the owner of Madak, a local marketing agency in Stanwood, Washington. Please welcome Adam Kopp. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I get to speak to Adam Kopp, who is the owner of Madak, a boutique marketing agency here in Stanwood, Washington. And they've worked on some projects with some of the local businesses here in this area, such as Windermere, Arrowhead Ranch, as well as the Discover Stanwood Camano project, and even for some of the local events like Glass Quest. But we get into a lot of different things, like the difference between marketing and branding and how those relate to one another and how they're different. He's got a huge experience in creativity and marketing and branding, and so it's it was really fascinating for me, as well as some of the tactics that we get into. We get into some stuff focused here on the local community, so be sure to take notes during that time. So anyways, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Adam Kopp. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with Adam Kopp. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Brandon. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining me on the podcast. So before we get started with everything, tell us a little bit about Adam Kopp.
A little bit about me. Well, that's obviously a wide question, but my wife and I have been on Camano for the last 7 years, and so I guess when I think about me as of now, as a family man, we really enjoy it out here. And but my background is a creative background, and I was graphic designer, creative director. So a lot of my professional career has been shaped around marketing and creative direction. So I kind of went from family man to professional. But when it comes to me, I'm a pretty straightforward person and like to work hard and enjoy spending time with my family and really making a difference in the world for a little part that I can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I get to see, you post a lot on your Instagram and your socials, kind of you and your family, and the ability of kind of being a owner allows you to have that flexibility and spend more time with your family at times. So
yeah, and I try to mix it together. It's kind of become one thing because having your own company, the lines become blurred, whether you're working at nights or weekends or mornings. I get the advantage of, taking the kids to school in the mornings from sometimes, but then sometimes I'm in the office at 5, 6 in the morning because that's just what happens, what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So it's good. I enjoy the balance and it's a good blend. So thanks for noticing, I guess.
Yeah. So, what brought you guys to Camano?
Well, my wife and I, about 7 years ago, were looking for our first home. I was living in Seattle at the time. I'm originally from Chicago. I moved out from Chicago. I moved out here to the Pacific Northwest about 12 years ago, and so when we were looking for our new home, my wife is originally from Vancouver, BC. So.
Okay.
We really wanted to have the advantage of being able to get to BC as well as get to Seattle. So we started looking at homes a little bit north of Seattle, and it was one property in particular that captured our eyes. So we drove up here one day, and it just happened to want to be one of those beautiful days on Camano Island that. The sun was shining, everything, all the stars were aligned, and we found a great property and put an offer in that day, the first time we'd ever been here. So it really was not as calculated as you would hope or think, but it just kind of put us here, and we've really enjoyed it ever since. So that was 7 years ago.
Very cool. Yeah, and it's surprising how many people that is their story of how they got to Camano.
Yeah.
I'm hearing it more and more talking to people in interviews and just in conversations.
Yeah, and so it obviously the drive-on island was a big selling point for us because we were also looking at properties on Bainbridge and Whidbey, and we just didn't enjoy the process of even waiting for the ferry to look at the property, let alone going back and forth. So I think I knew that it was a drive-on. I'm not sure if I did or not, but either way, we came on. It just was so easy. We didn't feel like it, but we had a little bit of that island life. But then, it felt great that we could get off as soon as possible or whenever we wanted to, and then roughly 2 hours to Vancouver, roughly an hour and a half to Seattle. Felt like it was a nice spot for us.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, very cool. So then. What were you doing prior to moving to this area then? Back in Chicago, what was is that where you grew up then?
That's kind of, I moved there in high school. I'm from the Midwest. I originally grew up in Kansas City, lived in Florida. I actually lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years as an infant. But Chicago was there from about grade school, or I should say middle school on. And so when I say home in Chicago, my parents are still there, my brother's there, and so forth. But so I was again on the creative side. So I was a graphic designer, worked at a couple agencies in Chicago, started my own thing for a little while there. But when I moved to Seattle, I was working for a few various startups, predominantly in the sports industry.
Okay.
And again, with that creative kind of niche, so became a creative director for a startup, and that's what really mostly drove my professional career in Seattle.
Yeah.
Prior to starting Madak.
Okay. So did you go to school for that, or is that just a natural bent?
Yeah, I went to University of Iowa for graphic design. I guess I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in graphic design, and knew I always wanted to do something in the creative field. Didn't exactly know what. Back, so that was 2002 that I graduated,
mm-hmm.
and so. I went to school when things were, we still had art classes that were not all computer-based.
Yeah.
So we were still in that fine arts world. Of course, some of it was computer, but it wasn't predominantly like it would be today.
Right,
and
right.
so it wasn't until I started working that I knew that that's the world that I wanted to kind of go into. And it just kind of followed or flowed nicely.
Yeah.
Based on what I enjoyed doing, and the agency world was my first job,
mm-hmm.
and that's what kind of kickstarted off.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of curious, just because you were in that the fine arts when it was still less computer based. Do you feel there's things that have been lost from switching to that computer based?
I don't think so, because I was taking like painting classes, and like I remember my professor, he would like at one point he had us put a blindfold on and we painted, and I was like thinking like, what is this gonna do for, how am I gonna get a job with this, and so it was at the University of Iowa that I actually went and worked for the university.
Okay.
And worked for their marketing department, and so I learned more at that part-time job than I did actually at. I'm trying to remember the professor's name, but he was a very smart guy, and I'm sure he had some some strategy there, but it was interesting for sure.
Yeah. No, for sure. Okay, so then you moved from Chicago to Seattle, and then you were doing that. Were you living on Camano Island, then commuting to Seattle?
Yeah. So when I first moved to Seattle, I was kind of bouncing back and forth between Vancouver and Seattle with my fiance at the time before we got married, and so we would kind of go back and forth, and then so I was employed in Seattle for sure when we bought the house on Camano, and so that was 7 years ago, and so the commute for that first 4 years wasn't that bad, but increasingly got worse over the 4 years.
Yeah.
So then I've been not doing the commute for 3 years now, and so I can only imagine it's gotten even more worse.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see how much it got, how much more time got added. You know, 'cause I think at one point I remember driving in, it took me 3 hours to get from Camano because my office that I worked at was right by the stadiums.
Okay.
And I'm sure there was a couple accidents and a couple of things. It wasn't the norm, but
Right.
3 hours one way was not something I was interested in.
Yeah, not sustainable.
Sustaining long term, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you'll notice now driving down, it's like that traffic hits earlier and earlier as you're driving down south.
Yeah, it just feels like it doesn't stop. And then coming back north, it's never not busy.
Yeah.
So
No,
you
it
either have to
keeps growing.
get somebody in the car with you, because that's obviously very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it's very, obviously I enjoy going to the city. We've got a couple clients in Seattle. We spend some time down there, but the daily commute can be a bit of a grind.
Yeah. No, I love visiting cities and enjoying them for like a weekend, and then I like leaving because, it's nice to be able to just drive and not have to stop and go and
That's right.
all that. Okay. So then when did you actually start Madak?
Yeah, so 3 years ago, October, so just like last month, was our third year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I guess I should take one step back. I actually started Madak in 2006. So as a freelance graphic designer in between some of my agency time in Chicago, I started Madak, bought the domain, was a graphic designer, and so I established in 2006 and kind of had that along as a bit of my side hustle throughout the whole time of working for various companies, and always had aspirations of doing it, but just couldn't ever pull it together.
Right.
And obviously it's a little bit nerve-wracking to go out on your own as well. So I think when I think back now, I think I needed the 18 years of professional experience to have the confidence and the know-how to go out and do it on my own.
Yeah.
So I think every entrepreneur has their own journey. And so I really enjoyed working for various companies, and it allowed me to, grow and learn as a professional and really find out the areas that I wanted to focus on. And then, so that was 2006 that I started Madak officially, but then in 2016 is when I opened the office in Stanwood. So Madak is like an agency. So prior to that, it was just me personally, but now we're an agency with more than one person.
Okay. Where does the name Madak come from?
So Madak is actually my first name spelled backwards with K for my last name. So at the time, I was literally looking for the shortest domain possible. Right. Because I really wanted to I didn't want it to be like Adam Kopp Creative or anything of that nature. So I through various Google searching and it just kind of came together. Madak.com was available, so I snatched it up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So for listeners, how do you define branding, and how does it compare and relate to marketing?
Well, I mean, branding is, a lot of people talk about it being your logo, and I look at branding as your reputation, right? So if the people are going to work with your business, or you're going to have a reputation on whether it's good or bad, kind of on the streets, if you will, you're just going to be known for certain things. And so I think that's really your reputation, your brand is the reputation, the actual experience that people get when they visit your establishment or deal with your company, or even you as a person, right? So a lot of influencers these days are individual people. Right. That's a brand on their own. So it's really it's your own experience that you have with these individual brands. And so then it's really the reputation that kind of comes with it. Right.
And I want to jump in real quick. So what are your thoughts on personal branding versus company branding?
Again, I mean, I like it. I think it's important. People want to deal with humans, right? Like people want to hear from people. There's always people in companies, even if there is a company name behind it. There's the people behind it that are driving that, whether it's the owner or the employees or whatever. But it's the I guess I like that personal brands are a thing because it's our reputation. So prior to the internet, it was what people thought about you when they interacted with you.
Right.
Like, so back when they interacted with you at the mall, like what was that experience like? What were you known for? That's your brand.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then how does that relate to marketing to you?
So, I mean, marketing is kind of utilizing the services that are available to everybody to get your brand out there, right? So you've got a brand. I mean, I follow yourself on Camano Commons and the brand that you've put out there. You brought a face to the establishment, right? So, which is important, right? So you know who you're dealing with, you know who you can interact with, and so marketing is just using all the tools that we all have access to get your brand out there, and so it's how good you use them, how good the creative is, and how clear your message is. That all of that kind of combines into a successful marketing campaign.
Okay, and so would you say like with marketing, you're more aiming at like specific campaigns or projects that you're kind of working on? I guess more like there are long-term marketing campaigns, but they're kind of campaigns versus branding is who you are and what you represent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. And I mean, I just go back to the brand is your reputation. Like I'm always have been known as the creative one. So if you're going to get a group of, professionals in the room, depending on the gather of people you're going to get in, there's the finance guy, there's the I'm kind of blanking on different
systems guy.
Yeah, the systems guy, the operations guy or gal, I should say. And but everybody's kind of known for what they can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And so that's been my brand and me personally, and then I've dubbed that into Madak as a company as well, being the driver of it and hiring different creative people, because that's the part of the piece of the puzzle that we wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
Right. So when we interact with companies, our clients or potential clients, like we feel like, and then we hit that marketing bucket, but then how does that dovetail over to sales, right? Which is kind of the next bucket closest to marketing,
right?
Is how does that close transaction, which is what most business owners are really interested in,
right?
But you got to
do both sides.
Both. Yeah, you can't do one without the other,
right? So would you say, like with Madak, is it focused on being the creative piece to that puzzle, or do within the organization you kind of cover all of the pieces?
We definitely cover all of the pieces.
Okay.
We're a full service boutique agency, whereas we're a smaller house, less than 10 people, that are focused on a full wide range of services. But we want to help. Usually our entry in the door because of our brand is the creative side, but then once we help people organize that, it's like, great, you can have the fanciest billboard in the world, but how does that convert, right? So then we want to help, bridge that over to the sales side and really marry those together into one experience.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're trying to do, which many agencies do that, but we're trying to create our own kind of reputation of being able to come in, clean things up, get everything polished, help streamline systems and all the creative, as well as keep the bottom line in mind, because otherwise we're adding to that because we're an expense on top of it.
Right. Well, and I think I've done some reading and research into branding, and one of the big things is being able to get everyone on the same page, because you walk into probably 90% of businesses, local, far away, whatever, and you go to just any team member that they have and you say, what does your company stand for? If you ask 10 employees, you're probably going to get 10 different answers.
Right.
So I think having that as a base of making sure that the whole team is on the same page of what you guys stand for.
Yep.
I think that's really important. So.
Yeah. So there's the whole internal part of that,
Mm-hmm.
which then affects the external, especially if you have, a good amount of employees. And that's the challenge of any business and as things are constantly changing, how do you inform people?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes into culture, right? So it's how does, what is your company culture and how does that affect, the decisions that you're being made both internally and externally, that really kind of helps shape that whole organization, whether you have an open door policy and people know about it or, communication and so forth.
Yeah. Well, and just because, working as general manager and now recently purchased the marketplace, but
Congratulations, by
thank
the way.
you.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you. How did you go about kind of designing your company culture and how you wanted Madak to look?
Yeah, so when I didn't really, 3 years ago when I started Madak, because I didn't realize, I thought maybe I would stay a one person show. I didn't really know, but then things just kind of started falling in line and one person, two people, and I think right now we're at about 8 people between employees and contractors that are kind of in-house, and so we had to pull together an employee handbook which has values and there's a lot of that. It was just more of like the exercise of going through and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that you stop and slow down once a quarter and review those things. And I think everybody could always do better. I try
Mm-hmm.
to pull the team together as much as possible. I try to do one-on-ones as much as possible. We always open door. We have, human resources department that's available for everybody. And so it's constantly changing the landscape, and but the company culture, I'd love to hear what the rest of the team had to say on that part. But really, I just try to be as transparent, and my goal is to be the hardest worker on the team, because then that sets the bar to be the one that. Because everybody's going to only work as hard as the person that's helping drive the ship,
Right.
And so we're very much a collective group that we all drive together. I feel like we're all kind of on the same level, but we all have different jobs. We all have different reasons for being a part of the team, and so the company culture is something that is just. Slowly been happening, but it was very important to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like by saying that is very important, and by spending time on it and really thinking through what that means, will kind of help the outcome.
Yeah. No, I think that is very important.
And then a quick little thing is I Netflix, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, put out a really amazing 100-page company culture deck.
Okay.
It won awards, and it went through this whole process and it just has a lot of great values in there. And so I remember in the first couple months, I, downloaded that and had that printed on my desk, and those were some of the things that helped drive some of the things. Because as I started to read through it, I was like, these are all the things that really resonate with me. So
Yeah.
I'm sure the company's grown and things have changed, but in general, that was something that helped shape kind of what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's been something I've done in kind of the last 6 months. Been working towards the eventual end goal of purchasing the company, but studying and talking to other business owners that have some layers of team members and things like that, like a decent team, and looking into those companies. And how did you guys create that culture? How do you kind of change a culture if it hasn't had the culture you were wanting?
Yep.
Stepping into that. So,
Well,
Yeah.
the culture is it's so huge because if you, as a business owner, if you take care of your team is going to take care of the customers and the clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so really that should be the focus as a business owner is, as small or as big as the team is, give everything to them, and then they will then in turn, give it to the customer.
Yeah.
Which is huge, right? And so that will really help shape, I guess, the culture or the tone of the business.
Yeah. No, that's good. So then circling back around, kind of more practical for maybe our listeners, and what's like the number one thing that you see local businesses are like a missed opportunity that they have?
Yeah. So, locally in Stanwood Camano in particular, there's been an ongoing conversation, I think always will be, about traditional versus digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so the crab cracker or Facebook, which
Yeah.
one's going to reach the audience? And I think the answer is always both.
Yeah.
So always do everything as much as possible and as good as possible. But really, you got to just think about who you're trying to reach, right? So if your demographic is a little bit older and you feel like that's where you're going to reach them, then that's where you should lean in and do crab cracker ads, do the newspaper, do flyers, do posters, do all those things. And but don't ignore the social media aspect that is obviously very much here
Mm-hmm.
and is very much present and is going to continue to grow. Because over the last 10 years, because what has it been? It's been like 20, 25 years since the internet's been here.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years since social media has been here. I mean, you know more about me because I post on Instagram
Right.
than you would have known. And I can't put that in a crab cracker ad or a newspaper ad. So there's just so much potential with social media that I feel like, local businesses could lean into that more. And these services are, quote unquote, free to you.
Yeah.
Right? Google My Business, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of these platforms are free. So it just comes down to putting out content and having a purpose with it and a plan and what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah. And something I kind of want to dig into here is whenever there's whenever there's a new platform, if it actually takes off, so like when Instagram came out or Snapchat or now there's TikTok, when these new social medias come out, there's people that I follow that they're like, your ROI is so much higher because the number of creatives on that platform is so much less than the viewership.
Yep.
But I've always kind of countered that specifically here is that our demographic doesn't have, most of them aren't jumping on the newest social media. They're usually lagging some. So like when you've worked on marketing campaigns or anything, have you put much energy into these newer platforms, or do you still stay with kind of the mainstays?
I mean, it comes down to, for us, it comes down to the client, who they're trying to reach. We personally, as Madak, we try to dig in and do all of the platforms as much as possible. So TikTok, we're on TikTok, and more of just for us to discover it and find out what the nuances are.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if you think about TikTok, they're the next generation, right?
Right.
So, there are future consumers.
Yeah.
So if you could influence them now to, and so of course that's a long-term strategy that you're marketing to somebody that is going to give you money in 10 years.
Yeah.
But for me, the platforms are just a vehicle to put out your message. So wherever it goes, and you want to kind of have a little bit of everything, right? So and maybe you can lean into a few that you feel like, so if Facebook you feel like is going to be the most bang for your buck, you can put a lot of your effort into there because that's where you're going to get your customers today.
Mm-hmm.
But then you could leverage Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, some of these others so that if Facebook does go away tomorrow, which I seriously doubt it will, but if it does, then you're not stuck on kind of one platform, and your message can kind of carry throughout all of them.
Yeah. Well, and then that kind of brings up another age-old like marketing question is email marketing. Like
Yep.
so many people, or a lot when you listen to people talking from marketers that are selling programs or whatever, they still say focusing on the email campaign because that's something that you have. Like you have their email unless they change it.
Right.
You always have access to them. Versus if you're on any of these other platforms, you could get shut down for a number of reasons. Is that a strategy you guys have worked in? Or?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, email is definitely big, but of course they have the unsubscribe option, right?
Yeah.
And GDPR is a new privacy policy. That's
Okay.
It started in the UK and now it's coming to the US, where basically, if you found an email online, doesn't mean you can throw it into your email system.
Right.
I have to basically authorize you to market to me.
Yes.
And so, that's something that's going to be that policy or privacy policy is going to be changing and evolving. And so, but yeah, definitely email is a good one to focus on. But also text is a new platform.
Right.
So as emails get clogged up and people are not opening, text is a platform that I want to try and start to gather because people are allowing us to go into their text messages now.
Right.
Right. So
which is like the most personal, pretty much the most personal you can get at this point. So.
But since nobody's gonna, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but people are less likely to answer the phone these days. They don't mind getting a message via text message, and it's gonna. So over the next, couple years, definitely text message would be something. So if you can get people to opt in with their phone number,
right,
and or email, so have a iPad or kiosk or availability to say, hey, how would you like to know more information, text or email?
Yeah.
Then you can start building up those channels, and they've got platforms out there that can do all the text for you as well. But we haven't started one yet, which I want to, but personally am signed up to a few, and I get messages, and it's kind of like my email. I just either delete it, I read it quickly, but they're saying that those are getting much more opens, obviously, because it's a text message versus an email. Like you can either
you can just completely ignore it.
Right.
Yeah, no one gets the inbox 0 anymore.
That's right.
All right. So, and we've kind of gone into this a little bit, but if you're starting like a big rebrand project, take us through kind of your creative process that you go through. Yeah.
So. And we work with a good amount of companies that go through rebrands, and so are you thinking like an existing company that wants to rebrand?
Yeah, like if a company comes to you and says, we're looking to rebrand, we want to become more relevant. We feel like we've kind of aged out where our relevancy and stuff like that. Yep. What's kind of your creative process you walk through with them?
So I think that if you talk about an existing company, so you're talking about the logo but also the messaging and kind of where they're putting their time and energy. A lot of that we like to stay within the world that they always have been. Like there's one client in particular that we worked with that they had a company. The company was around for 20 years. They had a particular logo, but we kept the same vibe, but it was just the evolution of it, right? And if you think about some of the bigger companies, Coca-Cola and McDonald's, they're pretty good about staying the same, but like Pepsi, how many different logos have they gone through? And
well, even like Instagram and Facebook have gone through evolutions over their time.
Right. Facebook just came out with one like yesterday or something.
Oh, I didn't see the newest one.
Yeah. So so it's like keeping the same vibe and feeling, but then staying relevant and fresh. I think that's important for all businesses, and it might not be your logo. It could just be staying on top of like the platforms you use or your website and things of that nature. It's important for people to know that you're investing in your business and staying relevant, and it makes people feel good when they come here as a customer to your business, that they want that it's not just you're not taking care of your brand or your business.
Right. It's not just on autopilot, but you're actually keeping
Yeah.
up to date.
You keep investing back in the business.
Right.
Right. People want to see that. They
Yeah.
want to know that you're continuing to invest and elevate, and it shows that things are growing, and new people are being hired, and things are happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. What do you see as the future of Madak?
That's definitely a good one. I'm being that I just hit 3 years. The first 5 years has been my focus to try to get up and running. There's some things that I feel like we've done in 3 years, and some things I feel like we haven't. But Madak for me it's a lifestyle company that allows me to have an office in Stanwood and live on Camino. We have clients all over the U.S. and allows us, and that's what I really like about it, is that, of course our clients know where we are, but it doesn't really matter to them. As long as the end result is a high quality product, it feels good for them and for us. And so the future is to really, be a profitable, sustainable company that can also provide opportunity for creative professionals that are looking to get in this industry to work in Madak, but also, because our sole job is to help other companies, we want to really do a good job and make a huge impact for those companies, and so that my brand or reputation, precedes us, as the years go by, and we're known for, pulling together really, strong, impactful, campaigns and brands for companies.
Yeah. Well, and even in the time that I've interacted, not necessarily with Madak directly, but just seeing you guys in the local community, you guys have done a lot within local companies, within local organizations and nonprofits. I've seen you guys. You're definitely getting out there, and it seems like you guys have, at least from appearance of how often I hear about you guys, seems like you guys have been growing quite a bit over
Well, that's
that
good.
time.
It means our marketing is working.
Yes.
No, it's one of the first projects that I was able to work on locally was Discover Stanwood Camano.
Yeah.
And so that was a fun project, simply because that drove out of a need of wanting to know, we had a young family, we were looking for things to do on the weekend, and so that was the driver behind how could you get local events, more efficiently. So was able to link up with the city of Stanwood and the Stanwood Chamber and really drive that project forward. And that has continued on with Jessica McCready, and she's done a great job with the project. So for me, that one in particular was nice because it affected, close to home, but also was able to, be taken on and run by other people, which was good.
Very cool. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid-fire questions. So the first one is, do you have a lesser-known or favorite location on Camano Island that you like to hang out at?
Yeah, I read this question, and I was gonna ask you, like, what are all these locations and where are they? Because no, I don't really have anything in particular. We as a family hit up the beaches and do different things, but I enjoy seeing the new businesses that are coming to Camano, the new restaurants and bars, and Terry's Corner has been growing great. So I don't have anything in particular, but the little Hobbit Trail is kind of fun.
Yeah,
that's a fun one. But no, it's interesting to see how many spots Camano has, and the Barnum Point just opening up, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And but no, nothing in particular. But if you have a hidden list, let me know.
All right. Pretend you have a friend coming into town from out of town that hasn't been here before. What would their first day look like?
Yeah, I mean, usually when people come to visit us, we, as most people do, hang out at their place on Camano and kind of relax a little bit. But, I do love the zip line is a fun time, obviously over at Christofferson Farm.
Yeah.
And now with Arrowhead Axe being over at Arrowhead Ranch, I think that's going to be a pretty fun activity to to take people and visitors to. So excited to take people over there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it was neat. We got to do the end of chamber event barbecue thing over there, and it was really nice.
Great.
Nice area. So, who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Yeah, I was thinking about that one as well. And have you interviewed Dave Casera yet?
I have not.
So Dave from Casera Galleries, got a gallery in Stanwood. I thought he was kind of an interesting one just because of being so art-focused in the area. He brings a fun flavor to the area. What about Jessica McCready?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
she was second interview.
Oh, okay, great. So I was thinking you probably hit a lot of the people, but yeah, no, I'm. It's fun actually to listen to your podcast, to hear all the fun stories that that you're helping dig up. So
good.
Nice work to you for making this happen.
Thank you. All right, and lastly, if you could have any message on a billboard on Camano Island right as you're driving on the island, what would that say?
Yeah, that's I'm not sure. Am I promoting Madak, or am I promoting the island, or what are we doing?
Whatever you feel people need to hear.
Come to Camano Commons and get a bakery. Some would say no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, to be honest. Welcome to CamanoIsland.com, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out here and joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah, no, Brandon, thanks for having me. It was nice, sitting down with you and talking through everything. And I'm really happy that you're doing this, because you're bringing out some stories that people would never be able to hear, and so looking forward to hearing more episodes.
All right.
After that.
Awesome. Thank you. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Adam Kopp for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And for more information on this episode or previous episodes, go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast. That's CamanoCommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.